Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Zhuang Zhuang. I'm the Global Head of Equity and Derivative Technology at Jefferies. I will be the moderator for today's panel discussion. The main topic for today's webinar is improving productivity, current challenges, and emerging technology. This was originally scheduled for the live event in April at Goldman Sachs, but given today's challenges with COVID, fixed trading community has created a series of webinars in place instead. So this will be the third webinar in a series of educational webinars scheduled throughout the next few months. Actually, as a matter of fact, I believe next week there will be another one talking about targeted trade advertisement. So the panel will discuss how emerging technologies such as automation, structured data-driven specifications, and machine learning enable faster client onboarding, mitigation of operational risk, and seamless delivery of new electronic trading strategies. More specifically for today, we will discuss how automation can improve and provide clients with seamless experience in certification and testing in the fixed space, implementation of machine learning, productivity topics regarding post-trade and fixed 4.4 allocation, and fixed initiatives and productivity tools responding to algo changes. And last but not least, how COVID-19 is affecting productivity and business transformation. So now just a little housekeeping before we get started. We'll start with panel discussion, followed by Q&A. After each panel discussion topic, we will post a polling question to the audience. If you have any question, please click the raise your hand symbol on your Zoom screen. This webinar will follow Chatham House rules and is being recorded. So now I want to say thanks to Activity for sponsoring this webinar, and I would like to welcome Robert McKay, CEO of Activity, to say a few words to our audience here. Robert?
Thanks, Zhi, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rob McKay, Activity's CEO. I'm delighted to be sponsoring this conference again this year. The theme of automation and improving productivity is very much at the heart of what we're doing. You're going to hear, I think, a lot from George and the panel today about a number of areas of our business where we're driving greater levels of productivity. We see it in our OMS business, where we're replacing legacy infrastructure in banks and brokers globally. A lot of that legacy infrastructure seems to be part of groups that have three-letter names. So we're busily upgrading and replacing all that technology. We see it in our principal trading business, where we're rolling out our market making, our vol trading, our ETF market making application T-Bricks in more and more asset classes. Historically, it was built for prop shops. We're rolling that out at tier one banks and getting great take up of that globally. You'll hear about it on this panel with our fixed testing and certification tools. We put a press release out a few months ago now about linking that up to machine learning, and that's helping our clients get to a point where they can onboard their clients more quickly, and it's helping us getting to a point where we can get towards hands-free onboarding. And finally, on the buy side with our NYFIX network, and particularly interesting on NYFIX matching, where we're driving down the costs of trade matching for the buy side, and where we're substantially improving productivity and performance there. So that's my shameless plug. Zhi, thanks very much for giving me a couple of minutes there. Looking forward to this panel as ever. It's going to be a great time. And Zhi, back over to you.
Thank you, Robert. Now, without further ado, let's get started with today's panel discussion. First, let's meet our panelists for today. I will let our panelists do a quick intro themselves first. George, let's start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Zhi. George Rosenberger. I am responsible for global strategy as it relates to our client connectivity services. That's everything from our order routing network, the fix engines, as well as our testing and automated onboarding tools.
Thank you, George. Scott?
I'm Scott Atwell. I'm at American Century on the buy side. I'm responsible for the systems that our portfolio managers, traders, and operations people use for the process. Obviously, I have a lot of involvement with FIX, and I've had a number of senior leadership roles within the FIX organization in the past.
Thank you, Scott. Next, Sedgwick.
Hey guys, Southwick Khanna. I've been in the electronic trading space for about 16 years now, almost 11 of those with Goldman Sachs. I run the global FIX integration teams that interface with our clients from an onboarding perspective, and also development teams that focus on automation and tooling for the FIX space across New York, London, Bangalore, Tokyo, and Hong Kong.
Thank you, Sedgwick. Alina.
Yeah, hello. I'm Helena Trishova. I'm part of the research team at Exact Pro. Just a couple of words about who we are, what we do. We are an independent software testing business. We're just under 600 people who build software to test software in order to provide functional and non-functional testing services to major exchanges and clearing around the world. What we do here as a research team is we look at new technologies like artificial intelligence, distributed ledger technology, cloud technologies, and we look how we can use them in delivering our solutions to our clients. And I'm also a part of Exact Pro initiative to support the monitoring, onboarding, and software testing working group within the FIX trading community. And our goal there is to come up with the ways of improving productivity around FIX. So thank you.
Thank you, Alina. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So now let's get started with our first discussion topic, automation to provide clients with a seamless experience in certification and testing in the FIX space and implementation of machine learning. We want to touch on how the FIX protocol enables faster client onboarding and modification to algo trading, and also probably include updates to ATDL, algo wheels update, and the adoption of artificial intelligence. So George, you want to pick up this topic first?
Sure, happy to. So as Rob mentioned, we announced 4 months ago, we're doing quite a lot in the space of machine learning. We're working with Satwik and the team at Goldman Sachs. A lot of the things that we're doing with this company, Amandra, that we've partnered with, they have extensive machine learning expertise, and their automated reasoning logic, from what we've seen, is second to none. It's helping us solve a big industry issue, right? And that's risk. The risk associated with migrating client connectivity from one platform to another, whether it be decoupling your OMS and your network for risk reasons, replatforming because a vendor's made a change or service levels have missed. So there's a tremendous amount of migrations going on right now. And what we were hoping to do with Amandra is solve that industry challenge, and we have. We've done it through machine learning, and it's pretty interesting, Z, some of the things we're able to do. We collect and analyze the inbound and outbound logs, right? So what came into the FIX engine, what went out. We have a pre-processing phase where we actually try to identify the pairs of the inbound message to the outbound message. We do something called rule synthesis or program synthesis logic, where we're actually going through and identifying what's changed. Then we bucket them into two things. We identify universal transforms that we have to make overall at the platform level or at the session level, and then any type of client custom transforms needed. After that, we perform rule compression, so more like a generalization. I could bucket a bunch of different rules or rule sets into one, and then ultimately we print that rule out to our FIX engine, right? It could be any FIX engine. In particular, we do it to our UL Bridge FIX engine. So, this is exactly the process that a person has to do manually, right? So if you're going through a migration like this, you're looking through tons of logs, you're trying to identify what conversions are there. You may or may not have that process documented, and you lose sleep overnight worrying that maybe I'm going to miss something, right? Maybe it's going to cause a market error. Just to give you some metrics around it, we ran 1,000 fixed message pairs through the system identified 54,000 transforms, 99% coverage of the 1,000 fixed messages, and we did that all in under 1 second. So the beauty of Fix is it's a standardized protocol, right? So because of that, it allows the machine to quickly detect any type of changes or anomalies and spit that out. And then we have a screen where users could actually go in and do some collapsing or massaging of the rules or rule sets needed.
So, I'm pretty sure it's tightly coupled with Ulink fixed engine, but as you mentioned, it's also basically fixed engine agnostic, right? You should be able to plug in any fixed engines there is, and then analyze the logs, the rules, and so on and so forth.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's engine agnostic, and it's more just the technology, right? So, to another scenario use case is we use it in our automation, in our automated certification tools. So, if you look at that, in that case, we actually take a client's fixed spec, or again, we could take logs, but we'll take a client's fixed spec, and we will create a IPL file, which is basically an electronic version of that ROE. And once we have that, the system will then create every single use case needed to satisfy that requirement, that ROE. So if we would typically manually go through a fixed spec and try to figure out all the scenarios that need to be tested, maybe you come up with a couple hundred scenarios. You run it through the machine learning process and you come up with 1,500 scenarios. And then even out to the edge cases. So think about being able to go to a regulator or a shareholder or someone in management and show that you've applied machine learning to actually ensure that your clients can comply with your fixed spec and not cause any type of errors or market dislocation. That's pretty powerful nowadays.
That's interesting. So Elena, you are also in your company in the testing space, right? So what kind of automation or machine learning or AI tools you're building to basically streamline the testing process, certification process in the fixed space?
Yes, thank you. We also we do work with fixed implementations, and as it is a standard of interaction about a whole network of diverse market participants, of course we do think about the ways to improve this interaction, and we do try to find better ways to ensure the best quality of business flows here. And when we look to the software testing area, we see that it does provide us with a whole set of different approaches. There are several of those, and using simulators, one of them, and it undoubtedly proved its sufficiency in testing. Though when we think specifically about the client onboarding in this case, and actually when we think about any other flow which involves interaction of two actual real system between each other, we prefer to avoid any distortion here, and what we want to see in testing is to assess the real interaction between two real systems. Another approach is model-based testing, as mentioned by George already. We also are big fans of this one, but it is important to understand both its benefits and its limitations. While it is perfect in terms of producing huge amounts of test scenarios or having it as a test oracle, the model itself is quite an abstraction from the real thing. So if there are differences with the real thing, we risk ending up with a false oracle in this case, or there can be a situation with hidden assumptions. I think everybody knows the situation when there is something that is known to everybody, but it doesn't make it, just doesn't make it to specification. So when we test against this specification, we just can end up with false confidence. Another concern which can be connected with the formal verification approaches is around performance. So we've seen so far that the algorithms around the formal verification could be quite greedy, and that it can mean more resources from both software and hardware perspective. And there's also a practical aspect when we come up with the lots of test scenarios based on a model-based testing. There's a question about the actual test runs on the client side, who is in charge and who actually does it. So when we try to apply all those thoughts to the actual testing process, we use this idea to create our model using process mining approach. We capture the real data from the interaction between two real systems, and we build a process model which captures each and every state transition for each and every order, so that they are shown in a form of a visual graph, and that actually offers more explainability when we show this to our client. He can see the discrepancy right away.
Okay, thank you. Cedric, like we're both from broker-dealer. So from your perspective, whether it's automation, AI, machine learning, where do you see the investment will be, the direction of the marketplace will be? Like where do you see the benefit of those new technologies that will help us, help our clients?
Yeah, so if I think of the space, in my head, it breaks down into three main vertical pillars. The fixed customization side of it, where you have, hey, I want my algorithm tweaked, or I want a brand new fixed session. That's sort of its own set of changes that a broker-dealer typically needs to make. The second pillar typically is, hey, I need to do testing. You have a new product that's released, new certification that needs to be done, and there's a whole set of effort that goes behind that. And the third is, I think George touched on it, like the migration aspects. We're constantly in a migration mode, whether it's upgrading platforms, vendors, languages, adopting the new technologies. I think there's three constant pillars that as a broker-dealer we're always working, right? If I start to overlay on these three main pillars, you look at automation and then machine learning, it starts to solve a number of problems, which I think the more sophisticated players out there were typically saying, hey, I can do a UI to do this. Back in the day, it was all handwritten, scripted. You would make low-level changes to flat files on a Unix system. And the more sophisticated players are already on UIs. And now I think we're moving on to the next stage where we can say, you know what? We don't need people to go and write code necessarily to do fixed changes, to do customizations, to create a fixed session. We can create that as self-service. We can look at what a particular salesperson has been working with and what product he's been selling. And when he goes and brings a new client on board, we can use machine learning at that time and data mining to figure out, hey, this client profile is very similar to the 5 previous client profiles that this salesperson brought in. Maybe we configure the next client to be exactly like those previous 5, so you already have a starting point and you can pull in machine learning and data sciences at that level. From a testing pillar, we're working actively with Activity to use products and build out fully front to back automated certification systems where rather than sitting down with, you wanted to certify 15 strategies, great, let's sit on the phone for 15 hours and test each strategy and scenario and the spec. Instead, you work with a simulation system that allows you to very systematically approach your entire specification, test the various scenarios, test transition states. I'm sure you all remember the fixed protocol section D where we understood what a transition state looks like. Like, how do we do that systemically, track it, and then be able to present results on it? That's where the next evolution of that testing is coming. And then when I look at the migration, that's where aspects and technologies like fixed ATDL start to add more value, combined with like automated testing, combined with machine learning and automation of our changes, automation of our fixed session creation, and saying, hey, how do we overlay all these technologies together to say, if I'm moving from platform A to platform B, or I'm moving from product A to its new version of the product, how can I interact with that product in a fully automated fashion? How can I build and deploy it in a full automated fashion? And how can I test it and get that guaranteed testing? So I think if you take these 3 big verticals that we have to do in the fixed integration space and then overlay them with these layers of technology, you start to get to a point where we don't need we've been using our brain power to solve very, very simple problems. And we have people who are very skilled in this space, and they should be solving the more complex problem and letting the easy, easy to do stuff, let the systems do it for themselves. Let it be self-service, right? And the end state that I see of this at some point, and it's in my head, I love seeing the idea of, if I build a new product and I want to bring someone on to use that new product, there's bots on both sides that are reading a fixed specification, whether it's in leveraging fixed ATDL and traversing the entire system, and they're reaffirming with each other. There's just bots talking to each other and saying, yes, I see this product the way it's supposed to be, and yes, I see this trading the way it's supposed to be. Bang, we're ready to go.
Okay, that makes sense. So, I want to ask you a question. Actually, this is more probably specifically to the broker-dealer, less on the client or technology firms, right? So, between broker-dealer and our clients, in the middle, many times it's not just a direct connection, right? Mm-hmm. There are OMS vendors, there are different fixed engines and all that stuff. So, how do you envision, using technology to overcome the discrepancies between different vendors, different configurations, and so on and so forth that sit in the middle between broker dealers and our clients? Yeah, like so, how to use technology to automate that part as much as possible.
Yeah, so I think we've done, there's two aspects there, right? One is making sure that we're talking about the fixed specification the same way, right? And fixed ATDL does solve a number of those things. And that's just one chunk of it. I think the next thing we need to go after is the implementation around the ATDL. I'm sure, like most of us on this conference right now, have used ATDL for various aspects of communicating the spec, building the UI, representing how our products look like in different UIs. I think what needs to happen is the next level of evolution needs to be, what's a standardized API around that ATDL? Because what we'll find is, often around that same ATDL, the way a hub provider or vendor codes around that ATDL is different from vendor to vendor, right? So it's not simply a factor, hey, I want to pivot maybe by region that I want to trade, or I want to pivot by my strategy that I want to trade. Well, we've done a great job of saying the ATDL defines how you can say what the spec is and how a UI should read it. What we've not done a great job on, what we need to work on next, is what's the standardized API that goes with it when you want to code your systems that use it. So whether you go to vendor 1, vendor 2, or you're a new player in the market, you have a very standardized way of consuming these specs and then building the code around showing what that spec actually looks like and be able to create the pivots that our clients often need, because not every client's need is different, right? I might want to see everything by region. I might want to see by strategy and then have region under the strategy. If we create a standardized API around it, I think that's kind of where we go with it. And a lot of that will come by leveraging technologies like machine learning and understanding how are these specs and ATDL implementations being used across the board right now. It comes with adoption and it comes with standardization.
Okay. Thank you, Silvik. So now, Scott, you're the ultimate client, right, for all of us, right? So from buy-side perspective, what are your thoughts about automation, AI, and all the things we just discussed?
I mean, I think I'm probably best to speak to the fixed ATDL and not the AI and the machine language learning, to be frank. I think that, if to just expand upon what we were talking about with fixed ATDL, because I was there, in the early beginnings when we sort of launched that. Fixed ATDL really tries to solve a specific problem, and that problem, has been that brokers' algos are, number one, rather complex and change very frequently and need to be represented in specific ways. And before fixed ATDL came along, and I have a proprietary order management system. So before fixed ATDL came along, if Goldman or Jeffries or some other broker came to me with an updated algo spec, they would give me some Word document with some screenshots of what they want and what the tags need to be and the like. And I'd have to go through and codify a special screen in my OMS for every single broker. And fixed ATDL really solves that problem because it allows the algo provider to document in a standardized format what the strategies are, what the parameters are, as well as how that's supposed to be represented on the screen. And as it relates to fixed directly, identifies how those things get plugged into specific tags and values that get sent across the wire so that they can be communicated. And So I co-developed an open source implementation called ATDL4J with Johnny Shields from Nomura in Japan back about a dozen years ago or so. And one of the things that we did with that was you can use that to, and the other way I like to look at fixATDL is fixATDL is a lot like HTML. In that you can have an HTML file and you can render it or open it in Internet Explorer and Google Chrome or Apple Safari or some other browsing tool. fixATDL works in a very similar fashion. And we needed reference implementations and we needed ways to be able to kind of make that happen. So what, for instance, ATDL4J does, and again, it's an open source implementation, is it can consume that file and then render it on the screen. And if you click on the right checkboxes or click on the right drop downs and push a button, then it knows how to fill in the rest of the tags that get shoved in the middle of that into the middle of the fix order message, which is really important. The way that we built fixATDL or ATDL4J, I'm sorry, is that you could use it as a standalone sort of display certification type tool, or it's kind of like a nested nesting doll. You could pull out a component inside of there and you could plug it in. So what I did was I took the component inside there and plugged that into my order management system. So every broker dealer for the last dozen years or so provides their algos to us in fixATDL. And we just can dynamically render that, and it comes right into our OMS. So it greatly speeds the time to market and delivery up. It creates a standardized form. And the other thing it does for us is if a broker, whenever a broker gave me their spec, then they're really interested to know, what does it look like to your traders? What does it look like to your traders? And I can go through and say, you know what, use ATDL4J, put your algo in there, make sure it looks the way you want it before you give me and have me spend any time on it. And that's what it looks like to my traders. So we've been able to plug that directly in there, and we have that in place with a dozen or so brokers.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, let's go ahead and take some time for questions from our audience. Please click the raise your hand symbol on your Zoom screen if you have any questions. Deb, I will pass along to you.
I don't see any questions right now. Z, do you want to do a poll?
Yeah, let's go ahead and go to the poll question for this section.
Okay, so the first question is, for fixed certifications, would you prefer working autonomously with a simulator or with a UAT specialist on the phone?
Very interesting. It's actually much higher than I expected.
Well, that just goes to show some of the investments that we've been making in this space are definitely in the right direction.
Yeah. All right.
I wanted to answer both because, I mean, frankly, on the client side, there are some things that it's great that there's a simulator, especially when it's stuff that I want to test and I don't want to have to coordinate with the other side to do that. But most of the time, the brokers really want to go through certain UAT type scenarios. So I think that to me, you want to find a balance between the two.
Yep,
but I
love having a simulator to be able to test some of my own stuff without having to coordinate and get somebody else involved.
And Scott, you nailed it, right? It's the ping pong effect of scheduling that's the pain in the ass with certification, right? So if you could have something that's always on, always available, you do 95% of it, against the simulator, then you get on with the specialist just to finish out and work those edge cases. I think
we're testing tonight with somebody in Hong Kong, which is
all the time.
The AM PM opposite of us. So.
Once a month, they give you 2 testing hours. It's tough.
Yeah.
Another big
along with firewall changes sometimes didn't go in, then it just let lots of variables in between. Yeah, totally agree. In the interest of time, I think let's get down. Let's jump in.
You have a question from Kevin Houston.
Okay, Kevin, go ahead.
Hey guys, hi Scott. Satwik mentioned the idea of self-service. Could you expand on what you mean by that?
Yeah, so one of the things we often find is, client A has one session, let's say they want to be able to trade low touch in Americas. They also need another session to be able to trade low touch in EMEA or in Asia Pac, or let's say they have strategies that they're already using in the for a specific region, and then want to be able to say, you know what, I want a customization on how they use that strategy, and pre-market open, route all my orders to Arca, and I want that customization on my session. The traditional way of going about doing that is you create some sort of ticket, then a fixed onboarder or integration specialist goes in and then either creates the session or creates a new session with the product features, or they go ahead and write code or scripts or update something in a UI that allows that customization to come into effect, right? Why do we really need those layers? If those types of customizations and new feature sets are standardized and cataloged, why can we not present them to our sales and coverage people to basically self-service that off of a UI or the ticketing system, where it basically says, hey, I have this available already in my catalog. I can automate this. Let me go through an automation process. And yes, there are aspects of, I need client certification, I need engagement with a fixed specialist, then let me go there. I mean, we're making heavy investments to build what we call an AI layer that first evaluates these types of requests and says, do I have a catalog offering that the sales and coverage person can use, and self-service those types of requests?
Okay, thank you. Let's in the interest of time, let's move to the second topic here, which is post-trade in the fixed space, like fixed 4.4 allocation and the fixed initiatives and productivity tools responding to algo changes. Scott, let's start with you on this topic.
So yeah, I helped lead this initial effort within the fixed allocations working group. So and just a little bit of historical context, my firm was the first firm to use fixed allocations. We started using fixed allocations in 1997. But in, I think, around I think around 2012, 2013, we were really focused on how to handle broker confirmations, especially in the non-US space. And several of the buy-side firms were using some incumbent vendor technology, and they were being kind of forced to have to switch and shift, and it caused some firms to actually reevaluate how they wanted to do that. And Fix it was within the specification and capability was adding more and more capability for post-trade. And specifically, the working group wound up coming and bringing together sort of like-minded buy-side, sell-side, and vendor firms to focus on establishing not just what goes in the messages, but how the messages are to be exchanged, and to create some overall just standardization best practices around fixed 4.4 confirmations. My firm and Capital Group were the first two firms to launch with that. That was, I think, in May of 2013. We've had a lot of success with that. We've had over, about 93% at least of all of our non-US flow using fixed 4.4 confirmations for the last 7 years or so, and that's been quite successful. I think from that point forward, there has been an even greater set of efforts by the post-trade working group to expand that capability to additional asset classes, but also to expand it sort of vertically. So Lou Rosado from BlackRock would be the best person to be on the panel to talk about this, but his firm, both as the investment manager of BlackRock, but also as the OMS vendor, have gone through and coordinated with vendors to extend fixed communication in the post-trade further through that life cycle, to do collateral management, to do different kinds of reconciliations, and effectively get all the way down to being able to initiate certain types of payments. So I think that there's just been an awful lot of work there. But certainly from a fixed perspective, the fixed 4.4 confirms, sort of squarely solved a problem in the space that we had in the post-trade.
Okay, thank you, Scott. So what, from where I sit, what I've seen is, there's a surge of, fixed 4.4 allocation requests coming from clients all over the globe. The challenge for us is because it's even though it's fixed 4.4, but every client has their own limitation meaning they are using certain OMS or whatever, so they may have a special customized logic we have to build around it. So even though it's a standard, but every request coming in actually is different. So I want to get your perspective. I'm pretty sure you get requests for those as well. How do you guys handle those kind of situations?
So, look, and I think we're still doing it exactly like you said, right? It is still relatively bespoke, and every client's needs are still relatively different. What American Century needs, what BlackRock needs. And I do see it's more of the prop shops that have made a lot of progress because they're building the product and the platform around how they want to manage their workflows and processes, right? I see the real step forward is this when vendors like our larger hub providers are willing to make the investment and step in and say, I will do the aggregation function across all these clients and step away from some of these legacy systems that we've been using that frankly are extremely expensive as soon as you step out of the fixed world, and be able to centralize and provide this as a service. I think that's where the next big surge comes, and I'm hoping and looking forward like vendors stepping in and solving that problem more than anything else.
And I would just clarify too, Z, that in terms of post-trade, fixed allocations are what we as the buy side send to the sell side, right? And like I said, I've been doing that since 1997. That's really, this is the block, these are the accounts, this is how the block breaks down across the accounts.
Yeah.
For us, the gap and the challenge is actually the broker confirmation, right? And receiving the broker confirmation. So even today, when I use Fix 4.4 confirms, I can send you the allocation in Fix 4.2, or I can send you the allocation in Fix 4.4. It doesn't really matter. That is really not a whole lot different. What I really care about, and you can do that and it helps automate you, what I care about is getting the confirm back from you, because that's what automates our step. So I have lots of brokers with, oh, that's great. Can you send me the allocation? I'm like, well, that's great. I've just helped automate you more. I want you to help automate me. I'm the client.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly the point. You made a very excellent point. Actually, lately we have seen actually clients saying this will be our confirmation. So basically, we're using this, but this will be our confirmation. Your
right, which is the way we implement it. Yeah, that's
right.
It is.
Which actually is great because by leveraging technology, we can streamline the processing and really build a STP process on our side to support clients as well. Especially with the increase of volume of electronic trading, this I believe is a must. Otherwise, right, you cannot really service your clients globally effectively.
And we've always taken the approach that really all the communication that we do from the buy side to the sell side, we're going to use Fix for. It's sort of a natural fit. Yeah. Now the communication we have with our custodians, we'll use Swift and the ISO 15022 and 20022.
Yeah. Thank you, George.
We've seen a big surge in our NYFIX matching and settlement process because we would do the matching and affirmation and confirmation like you mentioned, Scott, but have now gone down to the settlement process, right? So we're doing about 2 million matches a month, with allocations a month, which is pretty good, and it continues to grow. So we're seeing more and more of this across the street.
Okay, Alina, any comments from you?
Yes, I would say I'm very experienced in this particular area, but I just wanted to add from the general perspective when it comes to software testing and any knowledge demand, be it trading or post-trade. Our main perspective here is that when we come up with the testing tools, we just need to keep in mind that the complexity, the level of sophistication of the testing tool should always match the system under test. So when we come up with a situation like this, we'd better have all the test cases tested as a combination of all the possible asset classes, different business flows, different participants, upstream, downstream systems, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So now with that, let's go ahead and take some questions from our audience. Again, click the raise your hand symbol on your Zoom screen if you have a question. I will pass along to that.
Z, you have a question from Tom Jordan.
Hey, Tom.
Hi.
How are you?
Z, how are you? Hi,
Good.
George. Hi, Elena. Hi, Scott. I know everybody here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great.
We cannot see you. We cannot hear you.
That's better. It's pretty cool. The things you guys just talked about. right, in terms of using AI, in terms of automated testing, in terms of fixed ATDL. I'd like to get your sense on the implementation within the community. Is this something that, Goldman Sachs, Goldman Sachs is always like at the beginning of stuff and on things, and American Century. The sense in terms of, are these techniques, technologies that we expect to see more of in 2020? Are we on the early edge of these in terms of the automated testing, in terms of using AI for reading logs, in terms of fixed ATDL? Could you give us a sense of where you think the overall community is with these initiatives?
Scott?
I mean, Tom, I
George,
think
sorry.
with the machine learning, I think it's still very early days with machine learning. There's a lot of different applications along the fix, and trade life cycle and fix workflow where machine learning could be used. We continuously kind of push the envelope to see where else we could help automate it. Basically, any manual function, anything where you have multiple logs, multiple points of comparison, machine learning is great to help automate that, validate it, be a point of audit for firms. So I think it's early days, and we're just now starting to see it in testing tools, automation, certification, software. Now we're using it to convert clients' fixed connections over. So I think you'll see it more and more as it evolves into the front office, where they're using it more on the trade execution side.
I would say I'd put fixed ATDL in a different bucket altogether because it's been around for a while. I think its adoption is to be frank, I was really disappointed at the level of adoption, initially with that. I think it has picked up because it's clearly a solution to a core problem. I think there have been some reasons for when fixed ATDL was first rolled out, it didn't take up a huge adoption, and part of that is economics, and that the vendors, the execution management systems and OMSs that needed to embed that basically had a queue of brokers that were paying them to add their algos to the system, and having fixed ATDL and some of them had already created their own sort of solution similar to that to make that work. But I think that did impact our ability to kind of make that have that take off. That being said, I do know that there are a number of firms that are using it. In fact, the algorithmic trading working group reconvened over the last year or two, and we've been working on a second version, a 1.2 version of that, which includes some enhancements to that, as well as some flexibility to be able to sort of generically include the same component or section in multiple places, or to control regional like filtering on it. And then the other facet of that is to focus on some more of the complex order types, some of the pairs trades and the like.
Thank you. So let's move into the polling part of this section. Deb?
Okay. The next question is, are you currently either publishing or consuming fixed ATDL for sharing specifications and abstraction of the UI layer? There are the
Wow.
Oh my God.
Pretty balanced.
Pretty balanced. Yeah, very good. So to Scott's point, actually, it's picking up significantly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. So let's move to our final topic. We have less than 6 minutes, so let's get to the final topic. How is COVID-19 pandemic affecting productivity and business transformation? So with that, I will start with Sipik.
So I think there's been an up and down aspect of this, right? From something that we've obviously lost is that immediate feedback, the whiteboarding, being in the office together, some of that face-to-face interaction that we typically have within the same office, and now suddenly everyone's remote. And I think you do miss that aspect of it, right? From a relationship building perspective. But on the flip side, I see one real big positive that has come across is I have a lot more face time with my counterparts in the other regions, right? Folks that I would typically spend time with only purely on a conference call or would have a chance to sync up with once a month, I'm able to now meet them on a Zoom session very much like this on a weekly basis, simply because people are running more flexible schedules. People are running, hey, I'm working 7 to 12, and I'm off in the middle of the day to do homeschooling, and I'm working 8 to 10, and I can spend time with my counterparts in the other regions. I mean, I think it's come at both to some degree of productivity loss when it comes to being able to get in a room and do brainstorming sessions or be on the phone for those 3-hour marathons. But at the same time, I think it's helped how we work cross-regionally.
Okay, thank you. Alina, what's your perspective?
It's hard to say something not to agree with anybody. Of course, also think that we see pretty similar trends right now, but one of the insights I can share is that apparently that the situation around the pandemic helped us to understand some things better. For example, in some cases, we do feel that we need to adjust to ensure the business continuity, but in fact, this is just something that can effectively be done even outside the crisis. For example, as a software testing services provider, we are often asked to provide people on site for writing code. So this situation apparently shows that it can be put under the question whether or not such quasi-agile requirements are feasible. So remote work may be in some cases a good solution to be used even after the crisis. Which, by the way, doesn't mean the opposite thing. For example, crisis-induced solution does not necessarily will necessarily work like when we are back to our normal life. And maybe another insight here is more connected with the disruptions during those times, and this insight is maybe more connected with the software testing area. We really do need to test for resiliency because bad things do happen, and as this disruption around the COVID-19 shown, many infrastructures ended up unprepared. So here we do have the lesson learned. The humanity does not need those black swan events. It's enough to have the white swan ones because everything was predicted. Yet there are some firms which ended up unprepared. So.
Thank you.
Of course, and I already started my reference to Mr. Taylor, so I will probably stick with it and quote his recent tweet that insurance is much cheaper than catastrophe.
Okay, thank you. So quickly, Scott, George, 1 minute each. Start. Scott,
sure,
let's go.
Sure. I mean, yeah. So I think for my firm, we've been 100% offsite, kind of from the get-go, and we continue to be that way. I think as it relates directly to trading, one of the things for us is that we already traded Asia and part of Europe from home. So we'd already equipped traders at home with the same types of configurations and turrets and 4 screens that they would have in the office. And we ended up just rolling that same configuration out to our existing traders. So we've been able to, pretty much not miss a beat.
Okay, thank you. George?
I mean, for us, Z, it's modus operandi, right? We've used Zoom for years. It's a large global organization. I could say the number of commits are probably flat to slightly up because we track those KPIs all the time. However, I would think productivity's marginally down just because nobody's taking vacation time because they're all working from home anyway. So, right now it's easier because everybody's using Zoom. I think once it goes to a split model and you're going to have a room full of people using Zoom and some people individually at home, that's where I think the communication breakdown is going to start to happen.
Yeah, that's
and
a
I
very
think
good point. Yeah.
One of the panelists mentioned in our prep session before that I thought was very enlightening is that there's actually a greater overlap with other regions now, because that time that you would have had commuting into the office,
Right.
or the person in Asia going home, or in India coming home, you have a better chance to have a little more greater overlap in time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Very good. So Deb, let's just jump into the polling section. There are going to be 2 polling questions for this section. Deb?
Okay. So the next question is, from your perspective, has productivity gone up or down during the COVID-19 shutdown, leading to majority of the people working remotely?
Wow, 77%.
Impressive. Yep, obviously all those 7 a.m. calls, right?
Exactly.
And Deb, the second one? The second question?
Yeah, so the last question is, are you working longer hours working from home? Yes or no?
Directly related to the first
This
one.
one's going to be overwhelming.
So you beat 77% this time.
Ooh,
78%.
wow, very, very close. So it seems like even though after we, eventually we get out of this pandemic, working from home will still be, still to retain a significant presence in corporate life. And the way we work and the way how company operate will be very different. I think employers are preferring working from home because it looks, we're working longer hours and more productivity. But longer term, I think motivation and the innovation will be suffering because sitting in your living room for long by yourself, even though with Zoom and all that stuff, lack of the whiteboard and the interaction, that motivation and the innovation will suffer, I think, in the long time. So most likely it will be a hybrid model somehow. And so, the jury's out. We all have to wait and see how, what's the best going forward. So with that, looks like we covered all our topics today and all our questions. Thank you all for your participation today. And many thanks to our panelists for taking their time, sharing their thoughts and ideas with us. And thanks for Activity for sponsoring today's event. It's great speaking to all of you today. Now I will pass on to Kathleen Callahan, who will update us on FIX working groups and upcoming events.
Great, thank you. And thank you to all the panelists for your participation and insight. Interestingly enough, a lot of the topics that were covered today are covered within some of the active FIX working groups. So just to give you a little update on what we have going on here, as Elena had mentioned earlier, the MOST working group, that group is looking to improve the quality and efficiency of platforms and decrease the time to market by exploring monitoring, onboarding, and software testing. We also have the Global Post-Trade Working Group, which drove the automation of post-trade payments message last year, is now looking to provide similar efficiencies further down the chain, and they're going to be focusing on netting, clearing and confirmation messages, exploring settlement messaging, and the impacts of CSDR. We also have the FIX Orchestra Working Group, which is working to develop a standard which takes the ROE between 2 counterparties, typically produced in Word or PDF, and will deliver a machine-readable rules of engagement. And as Scott mentioned several times, the FIX ATDL working group originally was introduced in 2010. They're working right now on version 1.2, which will provide further functionality for items such as clock controls, grid orientation, multi-leg order types, and new filtering abilities. So if anybody is interested in those groups, please contact the FIX program office. That's just a handful of groups. We have many more that people are working on every day. And you can contact FIX at fixtrading.org and let us know if you're interested. And just wanted to get everybody up to date on the upcoming webinars in our series that we have here. The next one is on June 4th. It's the Trading Lifecycle and Ecosystem webinar. And that's at 12 p.m. And we also have another one on trading automation and its impact on transparency and regulation. That date has not been decided, but please keep up to date with our events page on the FIX Trading Community website, and we'll put the date in there. And again, thanks everybody for joining today, and stay safe.